for any event that wasn't answered. First of all, I would like to really welcome the speakers for their generous contribution into this event, into this forum. And I can believe that there is innovations should serve among the speakers when we had the initial discussion, and they were excited to be part of it. There's even interest that this continues to be an ongoing and a recurrent and a regular meetup of the same speakers and maybe additional speakers in the future. And I would also like to welcome the audience. I think we've got other parts of the map already engaged and present. This was yesterday, but today I think the map has already the majority of the map has already been lighted by participants coming from all over the world, and extreme east to extreme west. So welcome everyone, and really I would like to thank the attendees for their time. I've seen a lot of the attendees profiles, and I think we've got really a decent group of thought leaders and executives in the audience as well. So really appreciate your time, and looking forward to to delivering an informative session. Let me start with some reflections before we switch into the individual conversations with the speakers. It all started by me going through the Global Innovation Index and seeing that it really is today dependent on 7 factors: the R&D intensity, manufacturing value added, productivity, high-tech density, tertiary efficiency, research concentration, and patent activity. Now, and there's a clear absence for human centricity in the measurement of the global Innovation Index. This really was, to me, this raised the question, right? So I'll continue with my reflections. Why ICF? Why did we even think of having such a forum, convened at this point in time? Is simply because there is no similar conversation that's happening at the global level. So we thought it's really good to have one. The pandemic, the new normal, the working from home, etc., and the pressure that this whole situation is putting on everyone. And the question, has it really taken us by surprise, or have we been accelerating in a different direction and turning our backs to human centricity that has made it a surprise? That's a question that we will attempt at answering in the forum with the individual speakers. The legitimate question raised by almost every human being on how this is going to affect not only the social behavior. Okay, it has already started to affect our social behavior, our family time, and too many things. Okay, but it also is affecting our consumption patterns, leading to new buying and selling dynamics that is reflecting itself on the economies, and that is making it a much bigger problem to face. So we're facing not only the pandemic, but we're facing the pandemic and all the effects that are coming out of it. Since we've taken some time for the prepping and the kickoff, and I would really like to welcome Vera back on the stage. If you can connect Vera, so we can have. I don't want to delay you. Okay, so There we go. We can always go back to those reflections later on. But really, I appreciate your time, Vera. I appreciate your presence with us.
Thank you. Good to be here.
You represent, as I told you before, you represent my point of reference for investments and the ecosystems in general. The role that you play at a global level, the experience that you carry all the way, that you've carried all the way. I think every statement that you make would be insightful to us, and I appreciate it again for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Suleiman. So good to be.
If I may, ask you just to give a little bit of a quick intro of your background, so the audience understands where you come from, and then we can have into we can.
Thank you so much, Suleiman. First of all, I want to say, and it's a pleasure to be here, but of course, there are so many people in the ecosystem as well, right? So we're equally, everybody is important. I think that's what really makes an ecosystem, is when you look at all players equally. Everybody's welcome, and that's a really, oh, now I can see you as well. That's good. So it's better to have a face to speak to.
Exactly.
Black screen. So a quick intro. I've been building ecosystems for a few years now, recently with 500 Startups, a San Francisco-based VC firm, where I worked on building ecosystems in Riyadh by launching 2 accelerators, and in Moscow, also by launching accelerators and doing corporate innovation, entrepreneurship training. Before that, with Dubai government, Dubai Future Accelerators, that launched this largest government accelerator by pairing most innovative companies with different government departments. And before that, I was with Rocket Internet, which really is probably the company that built the ecosystem in Berlin. So yeah, building ecosystems, being part of ecosystems has been now a part of my, almost a decade. And I always look at the ecosystem in a very holistic view, right? So it's really important to make it, and you would love to hear that, it's a very human-centered approach, because entrepreneurs in the middle, and that's what it's all about, right? Okay. I strongly believe, and especially in this time now, that the entrepreneurs are the creative force to, create this new normality going forward. They are, agile and lean and fast, and they will make it. I think they will be essential for us to move forward, because everything we're using now is thanks to, innovation, us being able to have this chat online, the homeschooling, working from home, telemedicine, which is huge.
They've made a lot of things possible, actually, because of the energy they've invested, and because they come with a fresh mind into the market.
And also because, it's in time of crisis, many times, this uncertainty actually fosters creativity, so in times of crisis, you really have to kind of, if you're being laid off, you don't have a job, you really have to become creative. How can I, what can I do in order to, to survive, really, and make it happen? There's a great quote by Darwin that I quote in almost every webinar I give, but I think it's just so essential. He said that those who survive are not the strongest or most intelligent, but are those who are most adaptable to change. So I think, adaptability is really. Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. And it is about the ability to change. And here I would like to quote Wendy's statement. Wendy's going to be on the stage in a few minutes, and she recently released one of her straight talks into business architecture. Do we continue to change our organizations by disaster or by design? And that is to highlight how much it is important to be resilient by design, how much it is important to be adaptive by design, rather than by disaster. And I think it cannot be more evident today. It's a sad reality that we're going through. But again, but at the same time, it's a wake-up call that everybody is trying to react to. I've got a question. Definitely, the energy of the startups and the entrepreneurs is fueling not only the ecosystems of innovation, but also they're fueling economies. right? They're fueling economies at scale. If we look today at the unicorns and the amount of equity that really resulted from innovations and from entrepreneurs in the past 5 years, figures would speak of themselves. If we take it back to human centricity, now to be more relevant to our situation today, and taking into consideration that they're not the only actor within the innovation ecosystem. There are the investors, and there are the catalysts and everyone else. How would the investors react and take the human centricity element if it needs to be incorporated as a lesson learned from the pandemic into the innovations moving forward?
Good question. Thank you. So I think, we don't just have one crisis ongoing right now. So it's not just the pandemic. We have that crisis ongoing. We have the crisis ongoing on the financial side. Obviously, it has impacted a lot of companies, startups, economies in general. I mean, so many companies filing for bankruptcy, and big companies of which we didn't really expect this to happen. And third, we also have the mental health crisis ongoing right now, because it has affected people so much, on individual level. So I think this human approach will be really important going forward. I very much hope that we will not be just focusing on return on investment, as investors, but also return on people, making sure we actually are making sure that our people are doing well. And I think the silver lining of all that has happened over the past couple of months is that I think people have become more important. We have, as individuals, realized how important it is to have the social component in our lives, right? And I know about, I've been isolating on my own now for the past 2 months, and it's tough, to be completely without family, without anything. So I think that's important. So I really hope that startups will think about going forward innovation. How can we almost kind of create this human being able to be together again, but also feeling safe? I also want to mention, you spoke about economists and fueling economists. 5 of the most, the biggest companies right now on the US market as well want to make an impact. So a lot of companies have been built in downturns. Remember the last crisis, the financial crisis. Companies like Uber, Airbnb, Stripe, have come out of that. So I'm very optimistic, and I'm hopeful that this crisis will also bring a lot of new amazing companies that will make a big impact on the humanity.
I think yeah, it's another fine-tuning exercise that will happen now during the pandemic and post-pandemic that will make our innovations more relevant to us as human beings and to the markets where that we live in. So yeah, great. What advice would you like to extend both to investors and to entrepreneurs for the during the pandemic and post-pandemic to stay relevant and to stay in demand?
Well, I think it's different advice. For investors, I think it would be great if I would really encourage to look into startups that are creating impact. I think that's important. I do hope that the world will think in more sustainable terms going forward, after this. And for startups, I think if you're really itching to build something, now is the time. Now is the time to build something where, if you really feel and see the need for it now, but also post-COVID, we will continue, doing this, what we're doing right now, talking digitally, I think people will travel less, that's for sure, not only because the prices will go up, but also because, we realize we can't do work from home. So why do we need to hop on business flights and go, to 5-star hotels if we can save money? Obviously, that part of economy of businesses will suffer a bit, but we'll be able to do things digitally. So if there are startups out there, like I was saying before, that are itching to build something, I do think this could be the right time to build. And it's not just me, many investors think that way as well. So I think it is the right time. And I also think, being able to deal with unpredictability is one of the strongest tests of character. So it is tough, but I think if you really see the possibility, this is the right time to start.
I like it that you insist that this is the right opportunity now.
It's tough because if you lost your job and you're on the couch, it's better to start building something than just feeling sorry for yourself. But I know it's tough. I mean, I've been there, done that as well. So it's in a similar situation now too. So
I think most of the speakers,
digital is here to stay. So if startups are thinking, that they're building something digitally, it could be the right time. But of course, it's also difficult because there's not so much funding out there now. We have to also be realistic. Investors are being careful.
Is there a slowdown? Is there a slowdown on the funding? Is there an
So yeah, it's difficult to predict. If I would be able to predict what happens, at the end, would have bought probably Zoom shares before. So.
Exactly, which was totally unexpected, right?
Yeah, but here we are. I didn't buy Zoom shares, so.
Yeah. Well, it's never too late. There will be other Zooms. I think coming out.
You think there will be other crises? You're being hopeful.
Other Zooms coming out of this crisis.
Inshallah, yeah.
That would be worth.
Also, Suleiman, what I want to say to startups, it's really important to take care of themselves because, like I mentioned before, mental health is really key, and it's so important to make sure that that people take care of themselves. Because it's. I think that's also probably a new opportunity that arose from this because mental health became such a bigger issue, and there's not so much stigma around it anymore in our region. So people are talking about it, and I just had a call earlier today with somebody who told me about 2 mental health startups, one from Saudi, one from Egypt, that are doing really well. So yeah, make sure you take care of mental health, people. That's important.
Thank you for that genuine advice. I think this is really essential. It's an element that's been always overlooked by most business people, and it cannot continue with that with that forever. So Vera, thank you very much for the contribution again. It's been an honor and a pleasure to host you, and maybe we'll see each other again towards the end of the event.
Thank you so much, Suleiman.
Okay. Cheers.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. So within the next few seconds, I would welcome the next speaker on stage, and then we continue the conversation. Omar, I see that you've been struggling to broadcast your video. Yes, the video is only for speakers. You're absolutely right, dear. Brad, hey man, welcome back on the stage.
Thank you.
So Brad from Australia. Quickly, where you come from, and again, I really appreciate the time taken, and not only that, the late on the day, the time taken to be with us today. Brad, I know you're an authority in innovation. and I think people would like to hear what background do you have before we get into the talk, right? So I'll switch off my camera, and if you want me at any point in time to come back, feel free to call me in. Yeah.
Now, would you like me to use my formal presentation as well after I speak? Okay.
Sure.
Okay. My professional career is about just over 40 years. I spent most of that time studying the future in various domains, in defence, in law enforcement, in government services more broadly, in academe. I left to consult independently for about 10 years in this space, and I went back into the corporate sphere. And for the last 7 years, I've been working in corporate innovation, trying to develop a new practice that we call strategic innovation, which is a demand-led model of innovation, which is quite different to often the supply side. Last year, I returned to independent consulting and left the corporate world, and I'm fusing the foresight practice with the innovation practice and casting it as a means to future-proof organisations. So that's where I am at the moment in Sydney, Australia.
Great, thanks for the intro, Brett. So we would leave you on the stage for the next 10 minutes or so to go through the talk, and then I'll be watching the chat for any questions and answers, and I'll be passing them to you just in case, right? And if we couldn't, as you said, if we couldn't answer all the questions today, which we won't, we will definitely do that later on post-event. Please.
Okay, so I've still got a red arrow through the share screen function. Oh, it's just clicked. So you can see my slides.
Yes, Brett.
Well, firstly, Suleiman, thank you very much for the invitation to speak at the forum. I think this is a great initiative, particularly bringing an international perspective to this challenge, where the role of human-centered innovation often has a cultural edge to it as well. So it's great to bring a multicultural perspective to the challenge. I've just introduced myself. I'm the managing director of a Sydney-based consulting practice, and I specialise in strategic foresight, especially the application of strategic foresight to help organisations future-proof. And the challenge of COVID is fantastic. Well, I hate to sound positive about it, but it's a good case for organisations to start thinking about future-proofing their organisations. I took Suleiman's direction quite literally, and I've structured my presentation around those 4 challenges he asked us to address: a personal perspective on human-centered innovation, how could we better promote human-centered innovation, navigating this profit versus purpose relationship that exists in the innovation space, and finally, quite counterintuitively, how might human-centered approaches constrain commercial scaling or momentum of innovation initiatives? So first, let me go to, not too sure how to advance my slides here.
It's on
okay.
Yeah.
I got it. So let me go to this question of what is human-centered innovation. Some of these slides are going to be hard to see, but I just want you to get a flavour, and I'm sure Suleiman will be distributing these to all participants at the end. But I'm a big Peter Drucker fan, and he famously said that the purpose of a business is to create a customer. But many innovation initiatives that I've observed seem to want to create customers through improving customer experience alone. And I think this mistakenly equating customer experience with customer centricity is too narrow a construction. Human-centered innovation is a form of customer centricity, but I think it's starting to move beyond the application in short-term projects and become a really distinctive feature of organisations themselves and a basis for differentiation for organisations. Many organisations I've found claim, if you read their websites or annual reports, that they are customer-centric. I disagree. And I offer two quite easy tests for people to check on customer centricity. Firstly, look at your value proposition. And does the offer make technology its focus, or does the offer meet real-world human needs? And that's the focus of the value proposition. And secondly, review your data model. Is the customer data an attribute of a product or an offering, or is the product data an attribute of the customer? And I often find these two simple tests are a great way to determine whether you're truly customer-centric or not. But my proposition is that human-centered innovation is a management method. It allows us to develop solutions to problems by involving the human perspective in all steps of the problem-solving process. Now, applying this method needs a grasp of human behaviour, cultural psychology, physiological needs, and cognitive needs and limits. Now, I want to illustrate the human-centered innovation method in this slide, popularised by the British Design Council, I think from about 2005, but subsequently iterated many times. Now, in my practice, I use the double diamond as an innovation management artifact for mapping key activities and documentations. And they're the document symbols that you see spread throughout the double diamond. On this slide, what I've done is circled each human-centered interaction undertaken during the design and execution of this activity. And this was an in-market experiment for a national level trust-based commerce offering. So it was fundamentally about scaling up a commerce offering, but you can see from design right across to delivery that the human has been central to the innovation process, and we've captured it in all phases during the innovation initiative. So moving from a process view and trying to answer Suleiman's next question, how do we move from process to better promote human-centered approaches, human-centered innovation? I believe we can better promote it by combining a consideration not only of the fundamental human needs, but also with a multi-dimensional view of value exchange. And to me, this combination of meeting fundamental needs and creating a multi-dimensional value exchange offers a much richer value proposition that you can put in your business model. Now, I've shown a simple value exchange artifact on this slide. They're easy to create on whiteboards or with software to create those flows of elements of value. The important thing about value exchange models is it helps us involve an understanding of the customer's social values, not just the product's competitive attributes such as price, quality, and performance. Now, this human-centered perspective becomes more important when we consider the rise, for example, of platform business models that create value well in excess of meeting fundamental human needs. For example, consumers may have different needs and wants beyond tangible products, such as the experience of getting or using products and services. The third challenge that Suleiman asked us to address was this one of balancing purpose and profit. Importantly, I don't think it has to be an either-or argument. I prefer to reframe the challenge as how might we grow both profit and purpose? Let's take the case of the Internet of Things, an area that I've done quite a bit of work. In spite of the enormous hype around the IoT, which suggests there's massive market opportunities valued in billions of dollars globally, most businesses have had a limited success in transforming that potential into successful market offers. I think part of the reason for this limited success in profit making is that business is only seeking to meet a fraction of human needs. Now, this slide shows an artifact that I use to look at human needs. Particularly, this one is designed for eliciting human needs in an IoT context. There's two axes here, so briefly to organize or orientate you to the framework. The vertical axis represents the perspective. At the bottom, it's an individual perspective. At the top, it's a collective perspective, the we perspective. The horizontal axis is about what's happening with data. On the left-hand side, it's about data being static. On the right-hand side, it's about data being dynamic. Now, that allows us to frame 4 categories of fundamental human needs. But when you look at, when you populate this framework with the typical IoT offerings, you find that most of them are residing in the bottom left-hand quadrant. For example, devices to control the security of the built environment. And doing that is ignoring the business opportunities to satisfy other fundamental human needs in the IoT context in the other 3 quadrants. So by developing offerings to service these other needs, we can grow both purpose and profit. The final issue that Suleiman wanted me to address was the issue of could human centricity or a focus on human centricity. I'm just having trouble navigating the screen, bear with me. Actually operate as a constraint. Now, this sounds quite counterintuitive to an innovation practitioner, but on reflection, I've identified 6 ways that I think that human centricity could constrain commercial scaling or slow down the momentum of innovation initiatives. And I'll briefly look at each of those. And I've numbered them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'll start with number 1. Here, horizons, I'm referring to McKinsey's 3 horizons model of core, adjacent, and transformational. They help us shape an innovation portfolio and allocate resources, and with a common heuristic being the allocation of 70, 20, 10 across the 3 horizons, respectively. The core horizon, where the bulk of the resources are committed, is concerned primarily with hygiene and enhancement of existing operations by upgrading practices, as well as achieving efficiencies and better results. Now, Doblin identifies 10 types of innovation. 4 of these types of innovation are focused on the innermost workings of the enterprise and its business systems. These reside in this core horizon, where the economic imperative for speed, efficiency, and relentless execution may be threatened by strong human centricity in the design. The second aspect is one of voices. Now, there are 4 voices in any innovation initiative: the voice of intent, the voice of expertise, the voice of design, and the voice of lived experience, often the voice of customer. Now, all of these must be combined and balanced to determine the best outcome, design, and service. An emphasis on human centricity alone, the voice of the customer, might make these voices sound more like a cacophony rather than a symphony. Speed, efficiency, and relentless execution may be... Oh, we're getting a bit of an echo here. The third point, segments, is very important. The customer profile that we use in our business model, and which should be at the core of any innovation initiative, describes a specific customer segment, breaking the customer down into jobs, pains they experience, and gains that we could create for them. Now, a focus on human centricity might pollute this customer profile, and with elements of multiple customer segments, which will weaken the business model you're trying to build. The fourth issue to consider might be the one of jobs to be done, popularized by Clayton Christensen. It's important to, when considering customer jobs, to acknowledge the context that those jobs are performed in and to distinguish between the function of the job, the functional element, and social and emotional jobs associated with it. There's a tendency, I think, to not fully appreciate the context they're operating in and to focus on functional jobs, because these are usually easier to discern through ethnographic research. But a focus on functional jobs at the expense of social and emotional jobs can result in the illusion of human centricity rather than real human centricity in the innovation initiative. The fifth consideration is one of business models. An emphasis on human centricity at the expense of alignment with the underlying business model could weaken the value proposition. For example, value is created arithmetically in a transactional business model, but grows exponentially in a platform business model. This exponential growth characteristic could be lost if we focus in on issues of, if we're not aligned with the underlying business model that we're using. And finally, sensitivity to the external environment or external change, particularly structural change. Human centricity cannot occur without regard to external structural changes in technology and society. This is an area that I invest a lot of my time in. For example, the rise of prosumers, that is the combination of producer and consumer, combined characteristics of both, have far more influences with business these days. And as a result, businesses no longer completely in control of their products, brands, and messages. So we need to be sensitive to these external changes. Now, of course, this analysis I've just provided is highly speculative, and I believe that good innovation management will help mitigate many of the risks that I've raised here. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Brad. Very well said, and really quite comprehensive. And it's it's literature. It's definitely not only literature. It's literature and practice and lessons to be that can be taught to innovators. So thank you, man. It was a pleasure hosting you in this first session, and we'll see each other in the on the panels towards the end. Cheers, mate. Now I would like to welcome hey, Sucker. Can you?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Hi.
Hey there.
So finally, we're face to face, yeah?
Only took me around about an hour, so it's okay.
Okay. All right, Sucker. I think the we've got to wait for each session towards the right. So it's around in an hour from now. Unless you wanted to do some change now.
No, fine by me. Go with your agenda. I'm
okay.
happy.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Already a win.
So Wendy. Yes, I can see you coming back.
Hey.
Hey, welcome back.
Hello.
So how's it going so far?
It's great.
Yeah.
This is brilliant.
I think really the diversification and the profiles of the speakers that is really making the talks quite informative in various directions. And I deliberately did not ask anyone to stick to any structure, but because I really wanted to end up with 14 different unorganized point of views, so that each and every point of view would bring new ideas to the audience, as opposed to if we try to put it in a frame. So not framing it is playing out really well.
Absolutely. What a group of esteemed leaders. This is really cool. So
yeah.
well
so
done.
Wendy, thanks for being with us today and for taking the time. I'm gonna leave it with you. I won't take much of your time because I think we're running a bit behind schedule. So the floor is all yours, and I'm gonna be watching and learning.
And to share my screen, because I do have a presentation. Let's see if I can do this. Let's see.
Yeah.
We're all new. Do you see a presentation?
Yes, I can see it now. The moment I switch off my camera, it's gonna get bigger on the screen. And if you want, for any reason, to even make it full screen, you just switch off your camera at one point in time. If that makes you feel more comfortable, because the moment you do so, the audience will be see it even bigger. Will be able to see it even bigger on the screens. So go ahead. We're
Do you want me to shut off my screen?
no, it's really up to you. It's really up to
Okay,
you.
perfect.
So
And
I'll shut off mine. That will give you more space and real estate to play.
perfect, perfect.
Good luck.
Thank you. So I did a similar thing as Brett. I framed what's my point of view around human-centered innovation and what do I think some of the needs and challenges are. So just a tiny bit about me. I'm Wendy Keane. I am an architect of businesses and ecosystems and cross-sector sorts of initiatives. And my training and my passion is in sustainability and science. So that's actually my foundation. But so, in my opinion, anyway, and you'll realize in about 2 seconds that I'm a systemic and sort of big picture thinker here. So that's the frame. But to me, this is evolution towards a world that facilitates humans to thrive, and I think that means it has to be for all humans on every corner of this earth. It also means a healthy earth, because I love this planet. And in order for us to be able to thrive, we need a healthy earth. Current generations can meet their needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own. So that is borrowed from the UNEP definition of sustainability, but I think that's a really spot on measure. And, you know, I think human-centered innovation encompasses every aspect of our lives, from, you know, the products and services that we use, to the places we live, to the rights we have, to our ability to learn and grow and have purpose and meaning in our lives. So that's how I'm framing human-centered innovation for our conversation here today. And not to the exclusion of any others by any means, but I think there are a couple really foundational elements, and maybe I'll even say linchpins. And the first, and Brett has already alluded to it, and we framed that around the event, but it's the shift in business from profit to purpose and profit. From focus on shareholders to focus on stakeholders, which include customers and employees and suppliers and community. And this is, again, not to the exclusion of government or nonprofit, but I just think all three of these really need to work in concert for a better world. And the shift of business, like I said, I think is going to be a really core accelerator for us. Another foundational element is I think sustainability principles. So, you know, ideas around the not just profit or mission or policy, if you're government or nonprofit, but also the people and the planet. And, you know, there are frameworks that define for us, at least from an environmental and social perspective, what is sustainability. So we can define those pretty easily, but implementing them is really important. I have been so excited by continuing shift, and I just picked a few of my favorite headlines here, but last year, the Business Roundtable redefined the purpose of a corporation in the US. And this might be a little bit of a US-centric perspective here, but I think this has worldwide ripple effect. And essentially, the Business Roundtable, signed on by 181 CEOs, said, you know, the purpose of a corporation is no longer just about the shareholder, but it's about all those stakeholders that I said. Also, just looking at Larry Fink, his letter to CEOs from 2020, and there were others in previous years that were along the same lines, but Larry Fink is CEO of BlackRock, world's largest asset manager, 7.4 trillion assets under management as of the end of last year. And again, you can see in his message some highlights around purpose, not just profit, as well as you know, stakeholder thinking. And just one study of many, but saying that ethical purpose and profit they need to coexist. They're not at odds. In fact, I would say that I think purpose is actually a better way to profit and achievement of mission. And business, I think, is a very, very powerful mechanism for change. So just to give you a couple examples here, a couple of my favorites to share. The first is a company called Interface Carpeting from USA. Ray Anderson, CEO, has been a great leader of the company, and this company has been a leader in the sustainability space. They have been on a 25-year journey to what they call Mission Zero, which is having absolutely, zero emissions, which is a pretty amazing feat for a company that produces carpeting, produces physical goods. And while their statistics are outstanding, they've achieved this goal. Okay, I just want to say that it's over 90% reduction of greenhouse gases and waste going to landfills and things like that. But the great part of the story is they're a profitable company and they sell really cool and really functional products. And so they're, I think, just a good success story for us to see that purpose and profit coexist, and you can be even better when you have a sustainable company and a strong mission, strong purpose. Just to share another example, and this is in Denmark. There's an industrial ecosystem, the Kalundborg industrial ecosystem. It's also been around for a long time, and this is a great example of taking principles from nature of closed loop systems, the idea that there's no waste, the output of one organism, or the waste, becomes the food for the next one. They've done the same thing. And the Kalundborg ecosystem has 9 private and public partners, representing over 5,000 employees. And they exchange 25 waste streams. So, for example, the excess heat from some companies will feed into the greenhouse or feed into the district heating. So I think just 2 great examples here. And then to really bring it back to our needs to make these sorts of things happen, or the challenges, because I feel like those are 2 sides of the same coin. I think a lot of it comes down to vision and motivation. I think it's sharing the art of the possible and having people catch a vision of what could be and understanding the benefits of that. I think it's hard to make change unless you're inspired to change. We've had conflicting messages or messaging around trying to keep things status quo, but especially as I think about the leaders and visionaries that are on this call and attending this events, I think this is something we can do, is help create vision and inspire others and show them why to change. I also think measurement and transparency is a tremendous need to actually make these sort of things real. Measuring the triple bottom line, the profit or achievement of mission or policy, and the impact on people and the impact on the planet. What you measure gets managed, right? We all know that. But a company that might look really good from a profit perspective, if you feed into that the externalities to people and to environment, all things considered, they might not look as good. Culture and norms. So what people do, our communities, our organizations, our families, culture and norms are very, very strong. What's cool, right? Our values, again, as individuals, as organizations, as societies. And maybe it's time to really reflect and rethink on what's important from a human perspective. Principles for design of organizations, of products, of ecosystems. Of course, the policy aspect there, a motivator in a different direction, but we do need that balance. And then because we're human, the stories. We learn, we teach, we inspire, we influence through stories. So having more stories about like the Interface Carpeting story, or what amazing young entrepreneurs do, and that all, just if that permeates into our society, it will hopefully inspire others. And finally, leadership, of course, in the things that we all can do, because it makes a difference, especially when we bond together like we're doing today. I love this quote. Just to end, I think the way forward is perhaps not by trying to change the way things are and fighting that existing reality, but to build a new model that makes the old one obsolete. And I think we had that opportunity very quickly with the pandemic, but what can we all do to, again, build a new model that draws people in and inspires them to live and work a little bit differently. So with that, Suleiman, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Wendy. I mean, I cannot get enough from from your insights and the education, the practice, the experience that you bring out, and that it's all mixed with natural human centricity by design in your blood at heart. So it was really very, very heartfelt all the way through. I think that is something that we that will have to continue, and we will need to learn more from you and from your experiences, Wendy. Thank you so much for for allocating this time for us today, and we'll meet each other towards the end of the panel. Yeah, I'll give the floor to our friend Mick.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we'll switch to Mick. Hey man, I'm gonna be visible for a few seconds just to welcome you on stage. Yeah, okay. And then because we're running a little bit behind schedule, I won't take much of your time. So you rock.
I'll be quick.
Okay. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Good luck. Mick, we can't see you anymore on the screen, man. Yes, there you go.
Sorry, I lost you for a second, Suleiman.
No worries. So it's yours now. Go ahead.
Okay. My discussion. So this has been great, and I've learned a lot. Loved your presentation, Wendy. If you're still there, Brett, you had Power Pack stuff. I'm going to take a different contrarian approach, only because I'm a practical innovator and not as smart as the other folks in doing this. And so my background is I was an innovation officer, like many people listening to this, used human-centered design and design thinking and customer experience for a big company called USAA. And we were number one in customer experience for a long time. And then I became a consultant, and now I help other people. And I see very bad things happening with human-centered design. And I'm usually called in when things have gone so bad, so horrible, that people are getting fired. And so I'm just my topic is going to be, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? And what I'm going to do is make the point, if I can get my brief up here quickly. I'm going to make the point that if you're implementing human-centered design and you haven't done so already, that is, if your company is totally new to human-centered design, you have to take it very slowly, and you have to take it one step at a time. And you cannot, I'm getting it right now in reading view, you cannot try to implement it all at once, because that's a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for failure. And so if I can get my presentation up here. Trying right now. There it is. Oh, it keeps disappearing. Unfortunately, it's not a big deal. It's my elephant. I'll just bring my screen up. There we go. So how do you eat an elephant? These are the, Solomon, can you see my chart?
Not really. I can only see your screen. I mean,
bummer. Okay. Well, then I'll just talk through it. So there are design thinking steps, and there's human-centered design right now is a real hot topic in innovation. In fact, you go to an innovation conference, or you attend one virtually, you'll find 3-4 companies that specialize in design thinking, human-centered design. They're all very, very good because everybody wants it, because it works, because it's the way of the future, because of all the things that some of our other speakers are saying. There's 5 steps I use: empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. Regardless of the steps you use, those are big things. They're huge. You can't just take a company that's focused on ROI or measures, especially in my field, financial services, and expect them to jump into human-centered design and implement it right away. So what you have to do is you have to pick one of the steps, 2 at most, and focus on those and try to use those as footholds and grow out your capability. So you might focus on prototyping and make a really good prototyping factory, and from there grow out. Or you might focus on empathizing with people and get a group of people to go out and watch your customer and see what they're doing. But you can't try to do it all. And here's a classic true story of how you can't. So one of my clients and friends was hired to be the second in charge of a Fortune 500 company. It's a Fortune 500 company here in the US. He was brought in specifically to implement human-centered design. I'm not going to say his name, obviously, or the company, but it was his charter, his agenda. He was the number 2 guy in the company, right below the CEO. They brought him in from Intuit. He was an Intuit executive, and Intuit's really strong in human-centered design. The CEO wanted it. He said, "Bring me that guy. Let's do it." So, long story short, he had a 1.5 years of focused effort to implement human-centered design in a Fortune 500 company. And a 1.5 years later, guess what happened? He was fired. Why? Because he tried to do it all at once. I ended up showing up about a year into this mess, so I was part of the problem. By that time, he had a task force of about 20 people, about 5 executives and another 15 folks dedicated to helping him implement human-centered design across the company. He had hired one of those great human-centered design firms and already fired one of them. And he was moving full speed ahead. When I got there at a year in, the CEO was starting to get frustrated. Why? Because they were not able to implement it across their lines of business and departments. There were structural difficulties. Rather than try to take on one piece, he took it on all at once. And so he was trying to influence the processes of the organization, the people of the organization, the culture of the organization, everything at once. And it just didn't work. So after a 1.5 years, he was dead. He was dead in the water. And so he ended up actually getting released and having to go find another job, which he fortunately did. But it illustrates my point that if you want to take on human-centered design is like an elephant. You've got to take it. Oh, look at there. Got a screen. You've got to take it on one bite at a time. That concludes my presentation.
What a great conclusion. I mean, the elephant came back pretty much at the right time before.
Yeah. So Solomon, I gave you a couple of minutes back, I think.
Well, you know, this is really spot on, Nick, and thanks for giving us those minutes back. I think Riyadh is gonna be doing his bit without the pressure of time. But really, going back to what you've just said, which is you know, a true practitioner advice. Yeah, and I've written something on the wall for you. but also to increase people's faith and the efforts that we want to in the efforts and the direction in which we're heading. Right? We've been having this similar discussion 2 days ago on whether we dream big and we do big, or we dream big but we do small things one step at a time. Thank you so much, man. Pretty much insightful, and we'll see each other towards the end of the panel. Thank you. I'm calling our friend and fellow Riyadh. Please join the stage. It's all yours. So we gotta take that as a 1 minute break before Riyadh can make it to the stage to start his session. All right, moving on with Dr. Nibal. Can you join the stage? Yes.
Fine.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Yes, I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Nibal.
Yeah,
Really appreciate it. Appreciate that you've taken the time to be with us today, and appreciate that you know because you represent in your capacity the United Nations as well as efforts in innovation. So I can't be more excited than this to hear your views, especially on a subject that I've known it's dear to your heart. Human centricity and social innovation. So I won't take much of your time. I'm so keen to hear your point of view and to learn from your experiences and your observations, not only at the regional level within the ESQUA's geographical scope, but also your observations from the global community. So it's all yours. Thank you.
Okay, I will try to say hello everybody, and thank you for including me in this session. It's really my pleasure. And I heard the previous presenters. I mean, they said very valuable information, especially with regard to human-centered innovation. I'm not necessarily expert in human-centered innovation necessarily, but I'm okay. I'm dealing with innovation as it is very important for our region. Before going, I will try to share maybe my slides, some slides that I have, but I hope that it will work. If it will not work, I will go without slides. Then I try to see how it can happen. Do you see my slides?
Not yet, Doctor. I think there's a screen sharing button, one of the 4 buttons at the bottom.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, let me. Okay, I will try to do it. I will not take a lot of time. If it doesn't work, I will go without it.
Sure.
Okay, then apparently it's not really working. Then let me just share with you some point of view that why we are. I'm Nibal Idilbi. I'm Chief of Innovation at ESQA, and I am interested in innovation since quite some time. Let me just, before going into the human-centered innovation and maybe social innovation, which more interested for us, let me give you just a brief why we are so much interested by innovation. Just you have mentioned at the beginning of the session the perspective, the regional one, and in fact, as we are really concerned by the Arab region and its development, we are looking very deep in the analysis of what is taking place in the region and what is the challenges and what really needed to be addressed. And one of them we found very clearly is the innovation. In fact, based on some global statistics, in addition to the one that you have presented, we have compared the Arab competitiveness, the competitiveness index, in fact, in the Arab region with the competitiveness index in some countries, especially OECD, which are the developed countries. And we found that all the Arab countries, I mean, we are really in shortage of many areas. But what was struggling, what was very, I mean, how to say, eye-opener for us, that the challenges, the main challenges of the region are in the area of innovation, technological readiness, and higher education and research. Then these 3 areas which are really very much linked with the innovation, and this is based on the World Economic Forum Competitiveness Index. And also, if we go to the Global Innovation Index, which is, I mean, done by which is quite very important innovation index globally. Also, we see that the Arab region, not only they are weak in the innovation, but they are really how to say, their ranking worldwide is decreasing. I mean, and this is really astonishing, except a few countries which their ranking globally is getting better, namely Morocco and Algeria. But all the others, even the rich one or the Gulf one, they are decreasing in the global level in the ranking of the innovation. Then this is really something that is astonishing, and it should be addressed. And for that reason, we were very much involved, and we are interested by innovation.
Can I ask a question, maybe to make it a little bit more interactive and to stress on that point, because that is something that really needs to be studied. Well, when you say that, because the energy, and you've probably heard Vera and myself at the beginning of the event discussing the energy that's being put by entrepreneurs and the funding that's being also injected into those efforts, the economies that are shaping out of those innovations and entrepreneurial initiatives. Is it a disorientation that's happening that is still not playing out positively in the global ranking?
Yeah, this is in fact, there are many initiatives, as you have mentioned, and there are many initiatives taking place. There are some entrepreneurship The issue is that till now we don't see the impact on the global economy. I mean, and we don't see it very much on the social life neither. We are now interested by human-centered innovation. We don't see it. I mean, there is a lot of issues, and here the ecosystem of innovation is not suitable in many Arab countries. The legislation, research and development, it's a key. Okay, I mean, now we are speaking about grassroots innovation, which is innovation not necessarily directed or generated from research and development. However, I mean, R&D, research and development, the critical thinking, the analytical thinking, that we don't have it necessarily in our university, neither in our schools. And this affects very much, I mean, the innovation as globally. I mean, this is, I mean, then there is the human capital, where there is a problem with the human capital and their possibility for innovation. There is also the legal and regulatory issue that also, I mean, there is a lot of a challenge in legal and regulatory framework for innovator and for researcher, as well as for everybody in a way or another. Until now, for example, the legislation doesn't, and the legal regulatory framework doesn't have any facility for entrepreneurship, and either if they are social or even startup. There are a few, I mean, in only some few countries, 1 or 2 countries, you have legislation for entrepreneur and startup. Then there is this ecosystem which is really missing. There is the funding which is missing. And the scaling up at national level, not only at international level, even at national level, there is the scaling and how to make it a sustainable business. It is really a problem. And then this is where I mean, the main issue, let me say. Then returning back to human-centered, as the precedent, I mean, speaker said, that it is, we are concentrated on the human perspective, and this is, I mean, making the center or the focus on human. It makes it a lot of a change in the innovation process, as the speakers have already mentioned. As you might know, we are customized more to linear innovation or mission-oriented innovation. Traditionally, I mean, speaking the innovation, it's more about we go from the research and development towards prototyping, then maybe commercialization, and then we go towards marketing, where in the marketing stage we take into perspective the human-centered or the custom user perspective and so on. Now we are changing completely the process, and we are trying to have in the human-centered innovation to have the human in the center from the beginning, and then here then we have it from the beginning. We go towards innovation concentrated towards the people or towards the interest of people. I mean, and this make the process very difficult for companies and for researchers and even innovator, as my colleague in the previous session has said in the previous speech. Then it is really very dramatic. But let me return back. I mean, I link it a lot, the human-centered innovation, towards also the social innovation, where social innovation is more about, it's not the same, but I mean, it's also focused on the needs of the citizen and the needs of people. While in social innovation, we are more interested by solving some issue related to human developmental issue related to human to people, like for example, marginalized people. It could be women, it could be old people, it could be also refugees, for example, or people in rural area. It could be poverty in all area, and especially in some country now we have it. It could be access to some resources like electricity or water and so on. Social innovation is progressing in the Arab region, and there are a lot of movements since 10 years. In fact, it was not really many years ago, but since 10 years, there are a lot of movement for social innovation. And at ESCO, we started to look at the challenges of this social innovation in the Arab region. As I mentioned, the main challenges that are related to legal system, regulation, and there is no recognition of social entrepreneur for the time being in the Arab region. I think it exists only in Jordan. In the other country, it doesn't exist. There are some trials in Lebanon, in Tunisia. They are trying to solve this issue, but they are not there yet. And there are this is really very important, because social entrepreneurs today, they are registered either as NGO or as as small SMEs. In fact, small SMEs, then they have the same rule and regulation as big companies and so on. Then this is one thing. There is another issue, is the finding sometimes the good talent in management, in the management of these social entrepreneur or their companies, or also to find good technical people. I mean, to resolve the issue. What I find, then this is also another problem. The issue, another problem that we have in the Arab region is funding. Sorry?
You're referring to capabilities.
Yeah, capability. Yeah, and there is this issue of funding. There, you mentioned during at the beginning that there are funding. Yes, there are funding, but maybe for early stage startup, or for seed money for making the prototype, and maybe there is, also some funding for big scale. However, the middle scale, which is very much needed for social entrepreneur, it is really lacking in the Arab region. Then we don't have a good investor for social entrepreneur or for issues related to human, side. And then we don't have this funding. They don't cover the investor, and funding doesn't cover all the stages of startups or of innovation in the Arab region. This is also a challenge. I would like to say that today there are a lot of opportunity in the Arab region, especially with the use of new technology.
Not only in the Arab region, maybe countries around the world. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
This is for sure. It's a global. Then this new emerging technology like AI or big data or 3D printing, and we found that during Corona. There were some startups started to make some application or to help the society as a whole. And then this emerging technology, there is a lot of potential, and there is a big advice to some entrepreneur to use this new technology. And here we need technical capability, and here we turn back to education. I believe still in the Arab region, although there is a lot of things that has been done, we are doing our best. There are some countries they are pushing, but still the human capital is lacking, and we are not competitive at the global level. I want to add the issue of scalability and the issue of human-centered issue. There are some common factors that sometimes making application or solution very customized to special needs of specific customer, it might burden the scaling up of the process. And then it is, if you make it very local and you make it very specific, your solution for specific user, this might affect the process of internationalization. And maybe we can discuss it later on during the panel. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Really, the figures, the facts, and the evidences that you've presented are quite needed in order to establish the right directions. I think there's a lot of disorientation that's happening in the innovation space, and nothing better than facts and figures can help it really go back on the right track. Thank you so much, Dr. Nibal. It was a pleasure hearing your point of view, and that was really very valuable input from your end. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cheers. So I'm calling on the stage. Is Erika around already? There you go. So we're receiving on the stage Erika Moretti from EPAM. She's the Director of Innovation, and she's going to be with us on the screen in just a few seconds. There you go. Hi.
Hi there.
Hi, Erika. I'm going to enable my screen just to welcome you for a few seconds, and then I'll disappear. Well, thanks for joining us, Erika. It's really a pleasure to have you with us in this conversation. And we've already I don't know if you got a chance to listen to the other speakers, but we've already seen and heard different point of views. But there are a lot of common lessons that have been presented by the speakers. It would be really nice to hear from an innovation, if I may say, hardcore practitioner, right? You're at the heart of innovation market, and you drive innovations globally, and we're ready to learn from your lessons. So the stage is all yours.
Thank you. So let me just share my screen so we can go through that. Can you all hear me well?
I can hear you very well, and the screen is, yes, very clear.
Okay, so pleased to meet you all. I'm very, very happy to be here and very glad to join a forum about human centricity, which is, even from the other speakers, it feels like it's missing a little bit, right? So when we talk about profit, we usually forget purpose, right? So Erika Moretti, I'm Senior Director of Innovation for Europe and Middle East in EPAM Continuum. And I'm going to tackle this speech in two parts. The first one is to show you what we do around human centricity. And I'm sharing a case on how we usually tackle those challenges. First thing, what you need to know about EPAM Continuum. Continuum was initially, in the 80s, one of the first companies to actually apply human-centered design, because it was born on a medical field. So thinking about putting the patient at the center of designing devices for them or healthcare systems was a major thing on that moment. This, of course, exited the healthcare system and just improved the way we think about products, services, experiences, and how we actually help implementing them or generating impact. So one thing of our DNA of EPAM Continuum is to make impact that connects both a purpose and profit as much as we can, for sure. Not all the cases are similar, but it's something that we try to do hardly within all the projects we do. The reason now we called EPAM Continuum is because we were acquired by EPAM Systems, which is a technology company. So we do have another piece of human centricity right now. So how to leverage technology to make sure those impacts can be scaled, both on digital and physical aspects of everything we do, all the ecosystems. So one of the first steps for us is adding a research layer in every single project. So focusing on understanding people in terms of getting to their cultures, observing them, and understanding which are the behaviors that we can actually understand and connect to design everything we can imagine. So thinking about innovation, you have the issue of adoption, right? You have the issue of scaling that. So how can you make sure that things are relevant for people and actually answer to a need that overcomes what is said? Is much more on aspiration, on things that are not actually communicated by people during any kinds of experiences they might live. So that's why we do have this contextual research perimeter, which is a mix of ethnographical research and user research within every single project we do. So to make sure that the impact is going to happen and we'll be able to leverage the adoption of every kind of experiences we might design. Why is that? Because we do believe that what's the great thing of human centricity, right? It's by connecting those two elements. What you have on emotional side, on subconscious desires, so values, aspirations, experience you might have within a system, within a product, within an experience, and the functional side of that. So what is the problem for that specific system or for that specific product or that specific experience? which are the solutions we can propose, which are the features that will make so people can actually perform an action within a service, an experience, or an ecosystem. So we try to connect both always to make sure we do have the functional side of that, the business side of that, and it makes sense for people, will be used, will be adopted, and actually makes their life easier. So those are elements that we connect together. We do have competences within Continuum that goes from psychology, human factors, healthcare specialists for healthcare specific challenges, or other multidisciplinary teams that can help us understanding all the angles of what does it mean to be human-centered? What does it mean to actually make sense for people? But we do care about as well another topic of that, which is sustainability, right? So how this overall ecosystem can be sustainable, both from an economic perspective and from a societal perspective. How we can make sure that everything we designed are sustainable, are circular, are self-regenerating within time. It's evolutive, because we cannot imagine that a product, a service, or an experience is fixed in time and it's linear. So humans change all the time, right? And their needs as well. So how can we actually make sure that everything we design is evolutive and it's open to be changed, to be hacked, and to be recreated from processes, packaging, waste, usage, the ability of being updated, fixed, regenerated in kinds of, if we use products as an example, right? So how can we put together those thinkings? And we know that there's a lot going on and a lot of new methodologies or new disciplines being born right now and being rethinked to make sure that we can tackle things from a circular or from different perspectives that actually take into consideration an ecosystem. So this is one example of that. I'm pretty sure that many of you are familiar with the Circular Design Guide. But we do have other disciplines as well that are being born to answer to many of those challenges that were said before by the other speakers, and that we for sure encounter, whether if we're designing for a company, a multi-millionary company, or to a society. And we do have other disciplines that can be connected to that as well. So Dr. Nibal was talking about the role of technology, right? So there's a whole new discipline that's called Posthuman Centricity, which is exactly how can we design for a technology as if they're humans? How can technology assume a human perspective and make sure that both things can talk to themselves? How can we make sure that users can talk to technology and technology can talk to users, considering local limitations? Or if we expand it more, we can say that there's a new discipline called thing-centered design, which explore the limits of things themselves. So how would you design a toaster from the toaster point of view? How could this toaster live better in an environment? How can it be better disposed? So why not have different perspectives, right? So we do talk about how users are going to use that toaster, how businesses are going to sell that toaster, but how can the toaster itself be created to make sure all those elements are connected? Of course, to make it simple, there are much more in terms of disciplines, right? We do have life-centered design now. What's life-centered design? It's pretty much a mix within circular economy and societies. So how can you make sure the overall life cycle strong limit we do have right now? There's also society-centered design. That's a very recent one that was created during a conference for Service Design Days this year, which is a manifesto on how to put all those things together. So how can you design for society instead of for a specific human or a specific thing or a specific technology? How those things could be connected and could make sense for local contexts and for individual contexts as well. So we talk about citizen empowerment, civic commons, public health, equity, the planet. So that's very challenging. And that's what I like about this approach, because it forces us to connect and to understand which can be the new business models or service models or design models that we can apply to actually tackle all those elements and connect them coherently. So how we understand that here in our team? We talk about societal changes, and be it a new technology, a new environment, a disruption like pandemics right now, or other disruptions to come, or typhoon in Asia, for example, a new change in the society, or how can we drive economic inclusion, or how can we tackle marginalized youth and make them be included in the new society. So all those elements for us enter in this bucket that's called societal changes. So how can we design for hyper complex ecosystems that actually impact different elements? And I'm going to show you a recent case we did, which enters in our world connected to societal changes. And we are usually interfacing with foundations. Those kinds of projects, societal changes projects, to be honest, are not funded enough in all the countries. So I can connect with Dr. Nibal when she says that. That's why we do them through foundations. So we've been working with Wellcome Trust, with UNICEF, with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Those are the institutions right now that are actually funding both research and projects that will tackle society. So for example, I guess 2 years ago, we did work with UNICEF Lebanon to support the inclusion of marginalized youth from a refugee camp that came from Syria. Or we've worked in Jordan with the national banking system to create a service of microfinancing to their citizens. Issue is the system should be all digitized, and we have plenty of illiterate people right now who should use that system. So how can we make sure that even if it's digitized or independently of the tool, this is relevant, it makes sense to the local context, and actually people will use it because they understand it and they are able to. In some countries, Lebanon, in Jordan, for example, they still use, major part of the population still use feature phones. So they don't have smartphones. So how can you think about a system that works independently of an application? So the reality is it's not easy to combine all those elements. So what we try to do is to understand what makes sense for that community, for that society, in all the projects of social innovation, to make sure that all the elements are well connected together and we'll be able to implement them and make this change. just presenting to you very quickly this case for Wellcome Trust. We finalized that last year in December, so a super new case. And it talks about lots of the different barriers or constraints that your other speakers talked about before. So I'm mostly connecting with Dr. Nibal and to Brett. When I say some of those things, you're going to see in these slides. So what was the goal here for Wellcome Trust? So to create public dialogues about antimicrobial resistance. So we're not talking about pandemics right now, but this could be a new disruption for the years to come, a very huge one that tackles every single element of the economy. And what we're trying to do within this case is to open up the eyes of the overall society. It's a global project to make people understand, businesses understand that this is going to be a challenge and we need to, instead of reacting, proactively take actions to innovate the way the system is created right now and the way we can tackle those challenges to come. So our ask in this case was a two-way localized dialogue between public policymakers and researchers, by researchers, research community and the healthcare system around the world, which is easy, right?
Yeah.
All contexts are the same and all the tools are usable. So when we're talking about antimicrobial resistance, AMR, we're talking about the issue with antibiotics. It's an ecosystemical issue because it tackles the food production, cultivation, agriculture, cultivation, food production, food distribution, water distribution. We're talking about healthcare and self-medication. So we connect all those elements together. If one of those elements do not work coherently, it's very difficult to tackle that issue. So there's no one way to create this dialogue among public policymakers and researchers, because there's a link that does not exist today. And you think about context, the first ask of this program was, maybe we can do a digital platform when we can collect public asks, drive them to researchers, and then researchers can drive their results to policymakers. Yes, global. So in the picture, you can see our field research part of the project on Malawi. And of course, those communities do not have access to internet. And they are not used even to use those kinds of digital tools to actually start a conversation with their policymakers or their healthcare community. So how can we create something that's adaptable enough to actually answer to those different challenges within those ecosystems, right? So what we did as a first step was we had a list of 8 to 15 countries to be tackled by this project. The ambition is to go global with this program, but of course, starting from some pilot projects, pilot countries that could actually support the implementation of that at a larger scale. The issue with that is we need to understand in details how the ecosystem of the country works. So we did a deep dive on those 15 countries to understand how they work, what happens in terms of population, in terms of healthcare system and communities, the incomes, what is the mixed context you can have from a social and economical context, which are the services or the major part of the economy is based off. What is the adoption of new technologies? What is the healthcare providers organized as? So we've created those countries, as you can see down below. We created a picture of the different countries to be able to select the first 3 countries to start studying and create this framework to actually start this global program. We've created this system you can see at right to understand which are the countries that would represent the major diversity in terms of level of development of the country, approach to participation to their own local ecosystems, the response they are having right now to antimicrobial resistance, the channels of engagement that are used, and the potential objective on that specific community, on that specific country. To make sure we could select 3 diverse ones to start understanding how to tackle these, first smallly, and then enlarging it to a global audience or a global public. In this case here, we selected the 3 of them, which were Malawi, Thailand, and Italy, because they represent those mixes of diversities that would be interesting to understand and try to consider all the extremes we can to create something that works for everyone. What we've run there was a research phase of more than 160 hours of secondary research. By secondary research, we mean desk research, calls, interviews to understand the AMR strategies within the different countries, the plans and initiatives they have right now, the healthcare system, the economic system, and how those pictures are correlated right now in the country. And of course, policymaking, how politics work for that. We did some other interviews with experts, with policymakers from overall the world to understand which are the major topics that would be important to understand or to deep dive with. We had those finalized 8 countries photography that shows the overall ecosystem on how things are connected together or are not right now, and which are the links that we would need to make sure those efforts were cohesive. And of course, no funding and no time and no knowledge of the local context. So we needed to reshift the plan of research and focus instead in collective interviews from 6 to 20 people each to try to get a sense of the context, test our country's photography, make sure that we understand everything, and make sure that we were not forgetting to look at something specifically. So what are the major insights we got from that specific program that connects a lot with what other speakers were saying before? So there's a big challenge, which is the lack of cohesive ecosystems. When you talk about human centricity for societies specifically, that actually puts together all the ecosystem. There's no standards, maybe local standards or global standards, shared ones. You do have some guidelines from World Health Organization or United Nations, but there's no proper and defined standards right now, or regulations, or legislations, or funding for those types of projects, if not funded by foundations or specific companies that have a specific interest on that topic. So lack of connections. So how to overcome that? How to overcome among society, healthcare ecosystem, research, and policymakers? No one has the knowledge of the overall ecosystems right now. So it's missing a mapping prior to understand what can be actually delivered, what can be actually implemented. So what we've been doing when we encounter those kinds of systems is engaging the gatekeepers, what we call community antennas. That could be researchers, community leaders. Let's take Malawi as an example. They have healers right now that are the basis and foundation of the healthcare system. So how could we engage them to actually engage the community and the healthcare providers and the politics around that? For Italy, it's the other way around. How can you engage influencers that have connections with politics to actually engage the overall community. So what we're using to mitigate that right now is understanding what are the representatives of those communities, engaging with them, leveraging their networks, and making sure that we can collect all the necessary participants to join a project like this. The other point is the broken links. So not enough time or investment to run a full discovery, a full research. Collecting interviews using different formats could mitigate that. So maybe you're going to have a participatory event in Italy, or you're going to have a church encounter in Malawi, or you're going to have a research community conference in Thailand. So which are the events where you can actually leverage the collective intelligence? There's a gap in lingo, in behaviors, in adoption. Why? When you talk about societal aspects or very difficult challenge that could be COVID-19 or AMR or other elements to come, other challenges to come, lingo is very important. Usually people don't know what they're talking about. They don't understand the issue. There's no trust on information. And they can just not compare the impact of what we're doing, of what needs to be done, to their reality. So saying that the impact of AMR in a community is correlated, could be correlated as having 15, if I'm not wrong, 15 Olympics Games events within a same city at the same time, in terms of spreading of the issue. So using visual language, using simple language to tackle some misunderstandings, some lack of knowledge is necessary. It's fundamental to actually engage people in understanding the impact and understanding what needs to be done, which is a very, very difficult point as well. We do have, of course, different socioeconomic contexts. How can we drive that to make sure that everyone's included? And we do have sensitive topics that need conversation starters. So fear, right? Fear of something. So how can we open up that conversation by not augmenting this fear or that specific emotional aspect when it comes to sensitive topics? Which leads us to the next point, which is emotional journeys towards change. So yes, anxiety, fear of global threats, mental well-being is being very, very important right now to understand, and to understand how to drive communication and how to support those aspects. So we're currently overall in the globe lacking a proper attention to that aspect. Even now in COVID, are we going back to work ever? Are we leaving home anywhere soon? What's happening? I'm gonna lose my job. So how can we support people and in the meanwhile support profitability of those different elements, right? So that's where we need to think about how not to react, but how to anticipate change, how to create predictive modules that do leverage technology, but do leverage human feelings and are agile or quick enough to anticipate and create new plans instead of reacting to those. And of course,
Erika,
yes, please.
Sorry, I really hate to break your chain of thoughts, because we're truly enjoying the amount of experiences that you're bringing into this conversation. I mean, this is very much valuable, and I think 10 or 15 or 20 minutes is not really fair to go over these various experiences. But because we have other speakers in the queue, I will have to ask you to probably conclude within the next couple of minutes, so we can allow them.
This is the end, actually.
Yeah.
And of course, just to conclude, New adaptive and integrated models. There's no one size fits all, so everything needs to be designed accordingly to unique contexts. It needs a cohesive, integrated effort. So how to put together an ecosystem. And of course, we need new business models and ecosystem planning for companies as well. Here we're talking about healthcare, pharma, researchers, public administration, food production, all those elements that could come together. And those companies would need new business models and new ways to design, taking into consideration humans and societies, because it expands and grows over time. So only a last thing is advice, start small. So piloting something, creating evidences to make sure that this can be leveraged and be created in the future. I conclude here, and I can share this presentation with you, and you can find it on our website.
Overwhelmingly valuable, Erika. Thank you so much for bringing this content into this forum. I think it really enriches the the amount of practical experiences we wanted to offer to our participants and audiences, and I think really it is worthwhile a deep dive, maybe in subsequent sessions when you get a chance. We do a pure deep dive on those experiences and projects and initiatives. Thank you so much. It was really an honor and a pleasure to have you.
Hope it was useful in you.
Very useful. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sure.
So I'm calling my friend Rania on the stage. Sorry for being late, but I think everyone else agreed that it wasn't very fair to break the chain of thoughts of Erika, and I think everybody from the interactions found it very useful towards the very end and maybe beyond. Rania, can you join me on the stage if you don't mind? No, Rania Abu Nader, yeah. There are two Rania, correct. So there you go. Rania, I just admitted you into the stage. So you should be on the screen in just a few seconds. It's really amazing hearing from different practitioners the experiences at a global level in various fields. Rania, are you able to join? Okay. So, okay, I'll switch off my camera, and sorry for that, for those hiccups from time to time. Sucker is joining.
Hey there.
Hey,
I
man.
thought Rania can't join, so I can go ahead.
Yeah, if you fill the time, that would be really
I think let's give it a minute or two, because I must admit it's rather difficult to join this entire thing. So I'm on. So maybe Rania is still trying.
You can imagine the
go ahead whenever you want me to go. I'm here.
I think I'll text Rania anyway. Let's start. Soccer.
Sure.
Okay.
All righty.
Okay, man.
Share my screen. Firefox cannot access. All right. Okay. So it seems I need to share one particular item. I can't share my entire screen.
Which browser are you using?
I'm using Firefox. Should I be on Chrome?
Better.
All right. Give me 2 minutes. I have it open here in parallel.
Sure. Absolutely. Now, for those questions that were asked on the in the chat, and we were unable to address them particularly, there are not only questions but also elaborations and point of views that were really very valuable to consider for any subsequent initiatives of this sort. So I think we're gonna learn from today's experiences. And we will try to address questions and lessons in the subsequent editions. Well, Rania, thank you for
I thought so.
for filling this space. So that gives Sakar a little bit of time to manage his switch to the browser. Thank you. And, I'm gonna switch off my camera so you can go full screen with your. Are you gonna share your screen with
No, I'm not gonna share it. It will take a while, and it's okay. I had a presentation, but it's better not to
talk through it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
The stage is all yours. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm Rania. I'm the founder and managing director of Business Motion. We are a digital marketing agency located in Lebanon, and we are specialized in video marketing and video production. So I wanted to tackle something totally different from the other speakers. As we are talking about human-centered innovation, I'm going to talk about the early stage of the innovation. So first of all, many of the innovations they fail. I had a small analysis and find out a few of the reasons why they fail. So there was a research published online that revealed the top 20 reasons for startups that made startups fail or innovation. Now they analyzed 101 startups that failed, and they found out that 42% of those startups were making a product that no one is interested in using. Yani 42%. It was on the slide, but I don't know, it's not working. The bar graph. So there was no market need for 42% of those ideas. There was no market need for this product. If we also examine all the 20 reasons, we notice that 8 out of the 20 reasons they were due to a lack of communication. Like, for example, they had poor marketing. 14% of them, they had poor marketing. 17% of them, they had a user-unfriendly product. 14% they ignored the customer. 13% the product was mistimed, and other reasons like there was disharmony between the team and the investors. They didn't use the network. Okay, so 18 out of those 20 reasons were due to a lack of communication. Now, I built up on this. Yes.
This is very interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, these are reasons that are external to the venture itself. So that's why I'm saying this is very interesting.
Yes.
Sometimes innovations fail not because of the innovation itself, because of the way it is orchestrated with amongst the concerned parties. So happy to hear.
So why did these why did they fail? So there's something in the communication. Why is this lack in communication? Actually, let us think a little about the founding team, the team that is making the innovation. The founding team, they are innovators. They are most of the time young people between 22 to 36 years old. They are the millennials, and these are the digital natives. They were grown somehow in a time where human connection is drastically reduced, so they are a little bit disconnected. In addition to that, like every one of us, we are on daily basis bombarded by bad news, by horrific images. So due to that, our brain, in order not to be overwhelmed, it deadens empathy. So we are less empathetic. We are becoming less empathetic, and the founding team, the innovators, are also less empathetic. So we are asking a team of innovators that are somehow disconnected from the end user and less empathetic to innovate and produce a product that is useful for something that the people want. So here is one problem, because during the innovation process, when you research, you brainstorm, you conceptualize, and then you test. During all the phases, you need to communicate with the end user to know their reaction, to know their perspectives. So this was behind the reasons of the failure of the innovation. Now, this same problem was, that's why they need to use the human-centered innovation. They need to put the human being at the center of the innovation during all the process of the innovation. That was a problem long ago for software developers. They used to set the requirements at the beginning whenever they had to develop a software. They used to set the requirements at the beginning, and the developer starts with the project until the end. And at the end, the success of the project was if he met the requirements or not. But the client was not satisfied. In all cases, the client was not satisfied. So until in the 90s, they did the agile methodology. The agile methodology, they started putting the customer at the center of whenever you are building a software. And every time you want to move to a new step, you need to get feedback make the necessary revisions, and move to the next stage. This is what I wanted to tell. It's about the team. How are you expecting from a team to produce something that is that the people want, and they are disconnected and less empathetic? So this is why most of the startups, and one of lots of reasons are, many reasons are due to the founding team, not in the mismanagement or yes.
Well, that's a great perspective, Rania. Thank you for bringing it up. As I said, no matter how much we advance on our innovation efforts, it's for that critical soft skill. Yeah, that can really be a maker or breaker, and it often is overlooked or underestimated. No, that's a great perspective. We really wanted to hear that. We needed a reminder. We definitely needed a reminder, especially if there are, and I think there are, among the audience, startups and innovators and people who are active in the field. So that's a great emphasis to put on, developing the communication skills in general, so that it does not hinder the big plans of venturing into those innovations.
Actually, human-centered design should be applied in our daily lives ourselves. We cannot move on until we receive feedback to adjust and move on.
I couldn't agree more. You're absolutely right. Thank you so much for the contribution, Rania. We'll see you next on the panel.
Yeah, thank you.
I really appreciate it. So I'm gonna be calling my friends and fellows into the first panel, which is around the circular economy. So back on the stage, I would like to welcome on the stage Oriana Romano from OECD, and Sakar. I think we would have to shift it a little bit to in between the panels.
Sure.
I think Oriana might have a hard stop, so we need to accommodate that, if you don't mind. Yeah. So Oriana and Erika back on the stage. All right. So let me try and give a hand to. Well, Sakar, I'm gonna have you go through your individual session while we're assisting Oriana to join the stage for the panel. So it's back to you.
So back to me, because you cut out.
Yeah, it's back to you.
All right, wonderful. Okay, so I was hoping that I can share my screen with you, because I put together what I hope would be an interesting session. Let me try this now, but if it doesn't work, I'm going to jump directly to talking you through our session. So I think you can see my screen now. And what Sleiman said earlier was switch off your camera so people can see the entire session. Is that the case? Can you see my screen? Because I can't see the chat screen.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Perfect. All right. So I want to take 10 minutes to speak to you about what we've been listening to from other speakers, human-centered innovation. But really, how do we take this from concept to reality? I'm absolutely thrilled looking at the lineup of people that are here, and some of them people I know, some of them people I follow. It's an absolute pleasure to be speaking to you today. So I'm going to stick to my 10 minutes. At the end of these 10 minutes, I'm actually going to be sharing with you a tool set, namely enterprise design thinking, and also a way how you can get certified as enterprise design thinking, as an enterprise design thinking practitioner. And to Rania's point, start using this really in your day-to-day life, right? Because the world that we live in today is drastically different than the world that we used to live in. And I don't think a quote better hits that point on the head better than what Eric Schmidt said in 2010, where he said that there was 5 exabytes of information created between the dawn of civilization until 2003, right? So there was 5 exabytes of information. But now we're creating that much information on a daily basis, right? So that's really something to dwell on for a second. These thousands and thousands of years, all of these religions, all of these histories that we hear about were 5 exabytes of information, and now we're creating that much every other day, and that's a 2010 figure. Probably by now it's every 1.5 days, right? And what this is driving is a shift towards a focus on the human being. So 89% in a Gartner studies of executive came back and they said that we believe that innovation and human-centered experience is important. Whereas just a couple of years back, that same survey came back with only 36% as a number. And the drive for that is really the difference in people that we're interacting with, that we're seeing. So if we look at the socioeconomic landscape, we're looking at millennials hitting the market more and more, and these are people. Maybe I fall into that bracket. I never really understood where it starts and where it ends. Some people say it starts in '96. Others say it starts in the '90s. But millennials are people that don't leave their phone. 95% of millennials, and this is based on a Goldman and Sachs study, 95% of millennials use their phone to socialize, to shop, to interact, and to work. These are people that can't go 10 minutes without checking their phone, the majority of them, right? So they view the world in a completely different way. And they view the world focused on their experiences. A very good example for this would be what Apple is doing. Apple isn't selling you the next best phone. Apple sells you an experience that you have when you use their device. For the people that are based in Dubai, and I saw some of the fellow speakers, if you look at an Apple ad on Sheikh Zayed Road, it isn't the picture of a phone. No, it is what kind of picture can you take with your device? That experience that they sell. They sell you a human experience, and they've been one of the most successful companies in the world doing so. Now, this new demographic that we're dealing with, when they look at the world, they look at their last best experience, and that becomes the minimum requirement for any experience that is to follow. So assuming that I go to Bank A, and they have a great interactive customer app that I can do all of my banking needs. I can cover all of my banking needs. That same experience I'm going to be requesting from Bank B and C and D and F. So we're in a world where human experience, even more than ever, is now in the focus of what we want to bring to the market. Now, I'd like to do this little exercise with you. In front of you, you see a coffee machine. And I'd like to, in this next minute or two, relate to you how great coffee is. So I could use this slide that you see in front of you, and I can say this is a super coffee machine. This looks very interesting, and it looks like there's a lot of technology going into it, and there's foam on top of the coffee. But this looks like a good piece of coffee, right? This looks like a good cup of coffee. So this is me showing you the functionality, showing you there's a cartridge, there's a machine, there's coffee that's coming out. But if I really want to pass this experience of coffee to you, then I just put this picture in front of you. And when you see this picture in front of you, suddenly you know this is a warm, nice piece of coffee to start your day with. One, by the way, that I hope I had right now. If I wasn't fasting, I'd be sitting here with a cup of coffee. So just to go back to this is coffee. But here you're feeling, you're with the person, seeing and feeling what the coffee is to that person that's drinking the coffee, putting the human experience at the center. So I think we'd all agree, there's the saying, a picture says 1,000 words, right? And I think we'd all agree with that, that showing is better than telling, right? But feeling is better than showing. If you feel what the human being that you're dealing with is going through, if you're putting them at the center, it was one of our previous speakers who said 42% of ideas that came out didn't even have a need. Now here we're putting this on its head. We're starting with the human experience. We're putting the human at the center. And how are we doing that? What is the tool that we use to do that? One of the tools that we use is design thinking, right? And IBM has its own little form of design thinking, and we call it enterprise design thinking. And to anyone that's interested in this, at the end, I promised I will be sharing a way how you can get certified for free in today's environment. And design thinking, what are the key elements of it? And regardless of if you call it enterprise design thinking or the Stanford methodology of design thinking, we first of all, we understand and develop empathy for the person that we're dealing with. We're putting ourselves in the user's shoes. What do they think? What do they say? What do they feel? What do they do? We then start exploring possible solutions for a problem that this user has, or this person has, or this constituent. From there, we have a bias towards action. So we don't just understand and we explore, we start actioning those requirements in form of prototypes. And the reason why we do it on prototypes, and these prototypes can be paper-based. The reason why we do it on prototypes is because once you start touching and feeling it, using Lego or using plastic or paper prototypes, you can start interacting with that same customer or constituent or person that you're starting to deal with. And last but not least, you go through a constant loop of evaluating. And once you evaluate how this prototype that you came up with is positive and can be used, you then evaluate and you scale it further. Or the other way around, if you have completely missed the mark, you wouldn't be one of those 42% of startups that we previously heard about. You'd be someone that invested in a paper prototype, which by all means cannot have cost you that much. So a mantra that we go by, we start small, we fail fast to ensure that we are providing the best human experience to our end users. Now, this is all super and theoretical, but how can you make this into a reality? And here I want to talk to you a little bit about something called the National Health Lab for Emerging Technologies that we started in partnership with the Saudi Arabian government, namely the National Health Information Center, where we've set up an innovation space, a physical innovation space, as well as a virtual innovation space. And we started educating the community about the principles of human-centered innovation, right? There, we started interacting with innovation providers such as the Global Innovation Institute, which we started a chapter for in Saudi Arabia, and we started a chapter for the Global Innovation Institute in the UAE, which I'm proud to be heading up. There, we used these theoretical tools and invited a set of 250 young Saudi Arabians that are interested in supporting healthcare through emerging technologies, right? We put them in a structured environment and started focusing on the human needs. We then captured their big ideas and we started playing back on them, and we were proud enough to be hosted by the Minister of Health for the top 4 winning ideas. Those top 4 winning ideas, we actually took them into our lab. And we started working out and prototyping with them, defining their storyboards, and really inspired them to create better experiences. And I'm very proud to say that this is an initiative that's only 12 months old and was recognized in Saudi Arabia by the Ministry of Finance in Saudi Arabia as being one of top 8 achievements in their health. That you hear about in these talks and you read about in books, they're really applicable. And organizations that are doubling down on these innovative ideas are reaping benefits. And there's tons of research that I'd be willing to share, but I'd like to be as succinct as possible. Now, last but not least, I did promise you that by the end of the session, you're going to be given a way where you can start actually using design thinking for yourself. And right now, you can go on ibm.com/design/thinking and certified as an enterprise design thinking practitioner, and you start using this. In your day-to-day lives or at work. This is something very close to my heart, so it's an absolute pleasure and an honor to be speaking to you about this. I try to be as succinct as possible. Abraham Lincoln, I think it was, said that, please excuse me, I wrote you a long letter because I didn't have time to write you a short letter. What I just presented to you normally goes into a 3-day workshop, but I've tried to put it into 10 minutes. There's, I think, a lot of information behind each one of them, each one of the slides that you saw. I'd be thrilled to hear from you if you have any questions. But in the meantime, you can find me on LinkedIn, and I think I'll be sharing these slides with Suleiman as well to share with the wider group. Again, just to point out the badge that you can start working on just after you finish today, which you can sign up for on ibm.com/design/thinking. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Zach, for really making it succinct, as you've promised. I think, can you put back your camera? Yeah, at least so we can have a face conclusion of this brilliant session. You've nailed it. Thanks for presenting your perspective.
Thank you very much. It's a lot.
And looking forward to having even deeper dives into those. Like I can feel the passion and the interest of each and every speaker, not only the speakers but also the audiences, those that I had a chance to communicate with in person. They really want this to be a an ongoing dialogue and conversation, and I'm sure that you'll be
I'd be thrilled to support you.
Yeah. All right, thank you so much. So we'll see you on the panel in just a few minutes. Yeah,
Super.
Thank you. So I'm making a last-minute a change for the remaining 3 segments. Now I'm gonna be welcoming Oriana on the stage to hear her views from a circular economy point of view and how it relates to. Hey, Oriana, how are you?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly. So, so we're really thrilled to have you, Oriana. I know how busy you are, and I know, whenever we think circular economy, we can't just do a conversation without you. Yeah. So I've been looking forward to hear how you would bring human-centered innovation into the circular economy. I've seen a lot of your past conversations and discussions and the live events that you've been conducting lately, and so I really wanted our audience to benefit from those from the thought leadership that you can bring to the table around the circular economy topic. So it's all yours. But I was just saying and telling the audiences that I'm going to be merging the last 2 panels into one panel for a round of reflections, bringing all the speakers back on stage. We go for a round of reflections. Each speaker will make a 1 minute, and then we conclude the event from there due to the overruns that we had throughout. So it's all yours now. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Suleiman, for the invitation and for the opportunity to speak in today's event. So my intervention will be mostly a reflection on what I heard so far, and to see how all these concepts on human-centric design and innovation can fit in what I'm doing at the OECD on the circular economy in cities and regions. And I have to say that even though I heard a lot about designing and private sector and specific kind of innovation, I have the feeling that indeed this is also part of the circular economy approach. So So first of all, a very brief introduction on the OECD. The OECD is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Is based in Paris and is composed of 37 member countries. So what we do is basically to support the countries with policy making and implementation. And in particular, I'm working in a division on urban policies and sustainable development, where we look in particular at how to accompany and support cities and regions towards their transition to the circular economy, which is something, the subject that has been increasingly relevant for local, regional, and national governments as a way to implement the climate-related agenda. In fact, we have very recently carried out a global survey across more than 50 cities and regions all around the world, and the circular economy is seen as one of the actions, a very practical dimension that can favor carbon neutral economy and so tackle climate change at large. But I would like to say that it's not only an environmental issue, and here is it's about and realize that the circular economy is not exactly a new concept, but indeed the interest and the means by which the circular economy can be actually implemented is due to several factors, including the people, innovation, and technology. So when it comes to people, and this is one of the 3 points I want to share, the first point is about people. So people, what does it mean? It means that when governments are approaching the circular economy, it's indeed a shared responsibility, because they need the doers, so those the implementers, whether the business, the citizens, and how the other stakeholders from the private, public, and for-profit sector to really implement these kind of actions that are related to, for example, closing the loops in a wide range of sectors, from water to waste to food to transport to construction to building sector and demolition. The thing is that there are different forms to engage stakeholders, from communication to participation and to co-creation, which is what some speakers were talking about before my intervention, saying that, arguing that people should be engaged since the very beginning of this project. The same, it happens when it comes to the development of a circular economy strategy. However, our recent data through the global survey that I mentioned show that co-creation is actually implemented in less than 10% of cities surveyed. So there is still a small percentage, and much more can be done to concretely engage stakeholders. The second thing that I want to highlight is that there is no circular transition without just transition, and this also puts people in the center of the agenda. The just transition is very much about work. When we look at the data, for example, at European level, we can see that in 14 years, between 2000 and 2014, more than 1 million jobs were created in relation to the green economy. There is much more opportunity when it comes to the circular economy, due, for example, to the technology, and also lots of business models that are raising up through the circular economy itself. For example, renting, reusing, sharing, using services rather than owning products and goods. But we have to make sure of the balance between the winners and the losers. There will be industries and occupation that probably protection, occupational health, reducing inequality. The third point I want to make is about how to make sure that cities, which are embracing this transition, are rethinking their way of implementing policies in a human-centric way. And we saw it very much nowadays with the COVID outbreak, whereby we are rediscovering even the pleasure of walking, of taking the bike within global tragedy, without meaning anything else. But I just want to highlight that this can be an opportunity for cities, and we saw that there are several examples already at international level in Paris, in Milan, in New York, whereby cities, in terms of at least urban mobilities, are putting people at the center of their policies. So the cars in the future could be just an exception, which is actually already used at less than 10% of the usable life. So cities that want to rethink their future, they want to build back better after this tragic pandemic that we are living in these days, they really have to put people in the center and make sure that there are new ways of transport, of consuming food, or producing in a way that can combine the three main objectives, which are the environmental sustainability, the social justice, so the reduction of inequalities through access to services, and of course economic growth, because cities and regions are really engine of economic growth, and from this depends a lot of well-being for all of us. And I stop here. I just want to reiterate that through this program I'm heading at the OECD, we build our work on what we call policy dialogues. So everything that we do is based on multi-stakeholder consultation with more than 100 stakeholders from each cities. We hear the point of view of everybody, and this really allow us to make at the end within a report that you can find available online on the circular economy in various cities, what are the recommendations and the actions that can actually be implemented for people and by the people in each city. Thank you.
Well, this is a great, Oriana. I've got a few questions, maybe, and I've been very curious about the amount of work that's coming out of the OECD. I mean, I've been watching the space for quite some time now, and but I've got a few questions out of curiosity. Why is there a misperception that anything that relates to people well innovations that have immediate relation to revenue generation? But I see, for instance, circular economy is a great space and a huge opportunity for innovators to play and still be, commercial business models, not necessarily social business models or environmental business models. So do you have the same? Do you have the same impression? Am I right in saying that there is a global misperception on those initiatives?
Well, innovation is a very big and wide concept. For example, what we look at within our program on the circular economy in cities and regions is also institutional innovation, social innovation, beyond what can be technical innovation. The misconception, I can't provide you a specific response because it really depends on what you are. Which kind of innovation you are looking at. But what I can tell you is that when it comes to creating something new and using a technological solution for innovation that could improve the life of people, and this is not necessarily used for commercial use, but for example it can be used for reducing costs, for increasing resource efficiency, so for reduce eventually all the resources from water to energy that are needed for producing and consuming things that normally in cities are done. But what I want to highlight is that what we found out is that it's not really the problem of the technological innovation or the technological solution that is really complicated and is difficult to implement. It's mostly the enabling environment to put this in place.
True.
So all the governance around this kind of innovation and technical solution, the regulation that might not be updated, the financing could not be adequate, the information system could not be available, people are not aware of the benefit of this innovation, and they are not engaged, or maybe there is just not enough capacities from different stakeholders, from the private, the public sectors, and also from the rest. So this is, I think, is a combination of issues that we should look at that go beyond probably the technicality of innovation itself, and maybe they could look at the why. And this is, I think, what you were raising, is this for commercial purposes, or we are looking at the well-being of people along a certain horizontal time. But for doing that, we need to look at the conditions, the enabling condition to make this happen, and to make people, government, and stakeholders aware of the benefits of this innovation, and of course also about the cost.
True. And it does take strong determination from the policymakers, right, and from governments before an economy or a nation can transition into a circular economy. It is a maker or breaker. That determination of policymakers is a maker or breaker, right? And from your experience,
it is very important to look at. For governments to be committed towards this change. We are talking about a transition from a linear to a circular economy. So we are talking about an economic system, and this of course relates to a wide range of issues, and as I said, environmental, economic and social ones. So it is important to have a strong political commitment on that, but is not the only thing. This is something that people should be aware of, should understand, and should really have a great awareness of the opportunities and the benefits of this system. In Europe, there has been an increasing interest towards the circular economy in terms first of resource efficiency, but not only so. Waste, transforming waste into resources, designing out of waste, it means really have several environmental, economic, and social benefits that should be taken into account. In Europe, there has been an increasing interest since the European package from 2015 on the circular economy, and since then a wide range of governments have been working on the development of circular economy strategies. What is important in this case is, yes, the political commitment, but also the coordination across levels of government. Because if it is about changing regulation or adapting the fiscal instruments, generating a new information system, local government, for example, cities, cannot do everything on their own because they don't have all the necessarily power and responsibilities. So the dialogue across governments is very important and key for the future of the circular economy.
Great. One last question, if you don't mind, Oriana. Do you see an appetite from venture capitals, private equities, and so forth, to support, innovators in that space. The same way we see it, just to give an example that everybody will be able to relate to, the same way we see it, for instance, in fintech. Yeah, do you see that appetite exists? And maybe there's pre-pandemic and post-pandemic appetite measurement or appetite change. Do you have any numbers in this regard?
So in terms of how to implement the circular economy in cities and regions, what we have seen is that, of course, there are several financial, fiscal, and economic instruments that concern the participation of the private sectors. This is something very strategic and key. In particular, there are a wide range when we look at the territorialization of the circular economy. Of course, we have a wide range of startup, of SMEs, and companies of different size, but in the vast majority there are small or medium that are interested in adapting their business model. What we are saying is that there are the circular economy, when it comes to a private system, so a company, is really something that most of the companies have been engaged with for lots of years. It could be through corporate social responsibility. But now, even when it comes to the startups, there is a wide use of digitalization, technology, innovation that is emerging. How to do so? Through venture capital. There are several instruments. For example, one of the city that participated in the survey of the OECD survey, like for example London, put in place a system of supporting the venture capital system in order to see whether they are the needs of startup and SMEs. But beyond that, what is really important is to build capacity and to make sure that it's not only about starting up something, but also scaling up. In order for this not to be just an exception, but to become business as usual.
And sustainable moving forward. Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for being so generous in your intervention, Oriana.
Thank you.
We can't get enough of what you have to say and to offer in that space. Again, thank you so much for your time. And I'm gonna be calling the speakers back on the stage so we can have a round of reflection before we can conclude this event, this lovely event, and maybe promise the audience of some subsequent editions. So
thank you for the opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Glass is off, and it's serious, Rania.
Yeah, exactly.
Dr. Nibal.
مرحبا رانيا.
Well,
now, I don't say this to pass out just positive remarks, but I enjoyed every single session. Every single session, I had a personal takeaway that I didn't.
And we enjoyed your presentation very much.
Thank you very much. That's very kind of you, Doctora.
Hiba, I'm gonna start the round of reflections by asking you to tell us, because you've been really watching it through. Both the information and the hiccup and everything. I think this whole thing created an ambiance for the event. Please tell us what you think, and also contribute with your say on the topic itself.
Sure. Well, definitely. Besides what everybody has mentioned, and it's very valuable, I'll just I've noticed that we will have those who are, let's say, connected, the customers who are connected, and those who are not. which brings us to the financial inclusion and what Erika was saying. How are you going to reach out to those who are uneducated about the tools? So because this will take us back to how are you going to be human-centered in this aspect, and are you going to be using like big data? And imagine if we all contribute together and start sharing data on blockchain, be it on a health level or on a financial level, or for instance, imagine an oil and gas company with a telecommunication company, a bank, an organization, and they all start sharing their data and how they can get very, very like personalized and human-centered. And at the same time, when we're talking about human centricity, to a sector like as like those who are not financially included, or those who are not connected to somewhere where you can gather data unless there is a research happening on the field, then you kind of like have to tailor something for them and dig deeper in this aspect.
Sure.
So yeah, so in this yeah, it's just like I got so taken in my thoughts about it because it's huge. Yeah. So
yeah, it is indeed. But I've got a question to ask you in particular. Sure. I mean, you play in the banking sector, and and you act as a head of innovation for a financial institution. How is banking financial institution approaching human centricity? How has it been approaching it in the past? And what are the chances of doing things differently moving forward? Maybe with the shake of the pandemic that we've that has hit everybody. But from your angle.
From my angle, I see like there is more encouragement towards adoption of everything that all the technologies, for instance, that people were like skeptical of like setting foot in, as well as the use of AI and data. For instance, we have our data scientists, and this is how we approach the market. It's like, because as financial institutions, we have a lot of historical data. So when you're approaching a market, it's very like, it's based on statistics and it's based on numbers. So it's not just like a random approach. And more opening up towards like exploring new segments. Like when we're talking about like, we have a huge chunk of the population that's unbanked. So we try to like partner with let's say startups, and even encourage people to share with their ideas like internally and externally, in order to have few needs met, which is like the customer, and then from the innovator side, as well as sometimes you come up with something that's completely out of the blue, like because those who are not included in a or connected to a system, they don't know that they need this, or they don't know that they could be served better. Right. So so as banks, we try to like focus on these aspects and to include more and more of the population that's not making part of it, as well as putting into focus like the customer experience and creating a pleasant one. So such as we are very spoiled as customers in general on all levels. So hopefully, or what I'm aspiring for, is that banks could bring the same experience and the same value that others are bringing to the customers.
Well, it's through our efforts moving forward.
Exactly.
Yeah. Great. No, great and insightful, statement, Hiba. Thank you so much for the contribution. Wendy, I'm gonna ask you a tricky question, okay? Because I know you're good at answering those. What is it that would happen if we start shifting mindset from customer experience to human experience, at large? And we've been busy designing journeys, right, for customers, and those customer CX, the customer experience journeys, are pretty much around acquisition and retention, right? So let's be honest and let's be straight about it. It's the experience that would guarantee you the maximum number of of acquisitions of customers, and then maintaining the optimal number of at the retention side. So what would happen? What do you think would happen in a world where human experience would become the determinant or the element that we need to design and and roll out?
Mm-hmm. I actually don't think this is that far of a leap if you extrapolate this out really far based on kind of where we're going, right? Ideas like stakeholders, well, first of all, that shifts from shareholder and financial to customer. That's probably more clear to people, but that's also employees and communities and suppliers. And so and even when we think about experience design and journeys, there's customer journeys, right, and customer experience, but there's also been recognition of partner and human resource. So I think this is the right way to think going forward. But I still think, because let's be practical here too, we're always putting different hats on, and it might be I'm in this company, or I'm in this government, or I'm now in these shoes, right? If you have the right hat on, there's still someone that's being served, and I think we can't lose track of who's being served. Whether it's a customer or a constituent or a patient, right? And then if you look at the other experiences as supporting that, we even have metrics behind that, right? Happier employees serve customers or patients or constituents better. So I think, to summarize, it's not that far of a leap if we can continue this trajectory and show the value behind knitting these things together. But there still also has to be the guiding light, right, in every context.
True. And well, that answers it perfectly, Wendy. So, what are your reflections overall on today's event?
I'm humbled to be among such amazing people, and like it was already said, every talk was amazing. I really loved that today's event is like a prism, right? We all looked at it from different angles, brought different things to the table, but here's what really struck me too, no surprise. We are from different countries, we are from different backgrounds, we are from different professions, we have different perspectives. However, we're all knit together by this common thread of human-centered sustainability, building a better world, and that I think is amazing. And so I share it back to you and back to all of us. How do we continue this? Really amazing. We are bonded together by a care for something bigger than ourselves.
Thank you so much. I think that is to me at least the conversations and what I had to listen to and hear from the experts today was very positively overwhelming, very encouraging. That it's not human centricity and in starting a conversation and a dialogue that can evolve into maybe a further discipline and is not something that is impossible, especially with what you've just said, that we're coming from different places and we live in different conditions, but we still share the same aspirations around that. So Dr. Nibal, again, coming back to you, what is your key takeaway of today, and how do you think this dialogue that we started today has contributed to the making of human centricity?
Yeah, in fact, it was very interesting discussion to look at different perspectives from different speakers and experts. What I want to say at this stage is that it was really good timing to speak about human-centered innovation. I remember in the technology at one time, whenever we speak about any technology or whatever, at a certain point when the technology or the notion takes some maturity in the process, we speak about the human center. For example, at a certain time when we spoke about a computer and there was a kind of a human interface with people, then at a certain stage they spoke about how to make the better interface with a human with the computer. Then when we spoke about information society at later stage, which is much a concept, very important concept that we lived for a while, for decades. Then at a certain point we spoke, no, we don't want only information society, we want human-centered information society, that it brings added value to people. Then we centered, I mean, whenever something takes some maturity, any concept, I would say, or any technology might take any maturity, we intervene and we say, okay, we forget about the human and we have to bring it back to the human and to see the benefit for the human. Then what I want to say, I mean, it was good timing that we have to bring a human perspective to the innovation. I don't know if you are still hearing me because because we are almost at the end of the session. But I mean, then I was happy to hear about this, the different intervention, and that we are today speaking about a human-centered innovation, which means that, I mean, innovation for a long time was more, I mean, related. It is concept that is related more to research and development, the outreach, I mean, the involvement of research and development into products and services in a way or another. Or it is maybe the result of technology combined, because we cannot speak, most of the time we speak about innovation together with technology, because maybe it is the, how to say, the most